Hi, and welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to talk about key insight 4, greater focus on ESG and sustainability. So ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. So a lot of companies these days are moving into ESGs and something called triple bottom line, which is focusing on planet, people, and profit rather than merely profit. So if you look at ESGs in insurance, let's first look at environmental. So first we have things like climate change and sustainability strategy. So as an insurance provider, what is your climate change and sustainability strategy? How are you going to address these kind of concerns within your clientele? Then we have biodiversity. So how are you going to understand and ensure that your investments don't impact negatively on biodiversity? Then there's natural resources. So when you give a policy to a company, how are you guaranteeing that they do not abuse and exploit natural resources? Then things like pollution and waste management. So how can you ensure that your business as well as your clientele focus on minimizing pollution and much more effective waste management in their businesses? Then let's move on to governance. So this is basically focusing on things like diversity. So diversity of your insurance administration board, or what we call director board. Then we have things like business ethics. How strong are your business ethics, and are you doing business with clients who have very strong levels of business ethics? Then we have things like corporate governance framework. So how do you ensure that you have a very good governance framework to ensure that fraud and corruption is minimized, ensure that employees are happy and fulfilled, and a thriving workplace is there? So things like that. Then there's corruption, fraud, and instability. So what are the steps that you have taken to minimize these things? Then we have the social aspect. So things like universal human rights, human capital development, occupational safety within the work environment, and also addressing things like child labor. So these are a few of the examples as far as ESG in insurance is concerned. So now let's look at the ESG trends in the marketplace. So if you take the total worth of assets, it's estimated that insurance control more than $36 trillion worth of assets in the year 2021. So globally, they're controlling a huge amount of assets, and most of these assets are held for decades because these are very long-term investments. The impact of strong ESG is vital for the survival of the insurance industry because strong ESG generally indicates that the assets are sustainable. Then we have things like growing pressure to focus on ESG investments. So a lot of investors and all stakeholders are raising their demands and expectations from businesses to focus on ESG. For example, the world's largest asset managing firm, it's called BlackRock. So they manage over $8.6 trillion worth of assets. So all these $8.6 trillion worth of assets is expected to be governed by ESG considerations. Then we have things like the impact on underwriting. So insurance are focusing on incorporating things like climate change and sustainability, and also calculating risks like greenhouse gas emissions. For example, if you look at an oil company insurer, they might be reluctant because there's lots of carbon emissions coming from the oil company. So things like that. And also things like emissions, pollution, how they process waste, and things like that as well, and its impact, discouraging and declining to provide services for companies like fossil fuels and other major pollutants, for example, like plastic companies, and encouraging and incentivizing participants of the green economy, or what we call sustainable economy. Then we move on to the internal business operations of the insurance providers. So things like addressing the concerns of diversity, social justice, reducing the carbon emissions within their own business operations, and also setting an example for their clients, competitors, and other stakeholders. So things like going digital and also understanding the waste, being more effective in things like underwriting, and also investing in more projects like corporate social responsibility and taking care of the communities in and around the business. Then we have things like strongly regulated frameworks are being drafted and implemented worldwide. So many countries are publicly disclosing their commitments to go carbon zero or carbon negative and formulating the regulations to do so. Also, ESG frameworks are being built for insurers to evaluate their clients during the underwriting process to understand potential implications as well. Well, those are a few factors and insights and trends as far as greater focus on ESG and sustainability is concerned. I'll see you on another lecture.